Hey, I said we were coming back for a second episode on Plan Your Work, Work Your Plan, and I meant it. I'm a man of my word. We are back again with Ed Miles. You remember him from the previous episode. Ed, welcome back.
Thank you, Jack.
Not that we've gone very far, but yeah, we're going to finish the conversation on Plan Your Work, Work Your Plan, Part 2. And I thought the first episode was very interesting. Thank you, Ed, for all your insight. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing to talk about. Just to recap a little bit, in that first episode, we talked about the importance of knowing your audience, creating a clear title page for your business plan, creating an executive summary that will capture people's attention, the importance of keeping your mission and vision simple and short for purposes of clarity of purpose. And we talked, how does your product or service differentiate? So how do you separate yourself from what else is currently going on within that little industry or within that business? How do you bring people to you when they have so many choices to go somewhere else? So that was the top five of last episode. So we're gonna dig in to five more essential points to a successful business plan or a good business plan, which in turn, if utilized correctly, will lead to business success. There is a direct correlation.
Yeah, and I would say that just for expanding a little bit more on the last episode, and that knowing your audience. So I think the majority of business plans we see at the Small Business Development Center are very specifically a requirement of either WEDCO or a lending institution for accessing capital. So we're kind of going to keep along that theme, but I'd say that what I like to say to small businesses is when you're looking for a commercial loan to either, say, expand from your 10,000 square foot facility into a 30,000 square foot facility, or even just to start up on Main Street, southern New Hampshire, you don't just walk up to a teller at a bank and say, could I get an application for a commercial loan? I mean, that's not a thing. The commercial lending process is something that's going to require a business plan. Regardless of the amount of money or irregardless of the amount of money you're looking for, when you get into commercial lending, they want to see a business plan with financial projections. Those are the two components. They can be integrated into the business plan. Financial projections might be a separate document, but just back to framing the conversation, and to your point, Jack, yeah, business plans are critical. And they're needed. It's needed especially for, I would say, if they're seeking a loan with WEDCO, would you loan money without a business plan?
Just to my relatives. No, I don't do that. Yeah, it's not just the business plan is important, very important, and so much of what we do is based on character. So character is important too, capacity to repay. But you know what we really want to see? We want to see somebody who's starting a new business to be working with SBDC. That really helps. It's an indicator that this person is serious, that this person acknowledges that they cannot be expert in everything, which is an important acknowledgement. And we know if they're working with SBDC, the quality of the business plan is going to be good. Now, that doesn't mean the idea of the business is necessarily solid, but it all starts with that business plan, and we're unlikely to go down a path without it.
I think you made an important designation, because if somebody has found their way to the SBDC, the Small Business Development Center, and working with our business advisors, they've raised their hand and said, I don't know everything. I mean, that's, and they are often
so
coming.
Important to do that.
Yeah, that's coming from, often will be a referral from Jack at WEDCO and saying, Ed, I'd like to introduce this small business. They're either wanting to start a business or they're wanting to grow a business, seeking capital, or just in general making an introduction, came through the WEDCO door, wasn't sure what we do, passed them along for advising. But when they decide that after that referral, they want to further engage with the SBDC, they're admitting they don't know everything, and those are the best clients for us, because not that we know everything, but at the SBDC, a lot of times what we do is we use that knowledge from I think that the client count right now, I might get it off by plus or minus a few hundred, but we may have 3,000 clients at the SBDC over the past 12 to 24 months that our 10 business advisors have worked with. Think of all the variables of issues that we've dealt with collectively as an organization. When I say 3,000 small businesses, so we do a lot of co-advising at the SBDC, where I may bring in an expert in a different area, very specific to the client needs that I'm advising with, and we'll use the power of co-advising that too. So it's not just the knowledge of that one business advisor who's certified to be a business advisor with the Small Business Development Center. It's the ability to draw in the knowledge from all the questions we've been asked from small businesses in a bunch of different industries in New Hampshire that we've either been challenged with going and finding the answer to by bringing in our peers or researching it on our own. So that's the power of working with the SBDC.
The wealth of knowledge, which you're alluding to, which includes this broad canvas of best practices that you can't help but have witnessed, seen through the course of your work, all that knowledge becomes available to the next client.
And it's a pretty good deal at no charge.
No charge?
And I'm just going to say, I know this is a new episode. For the benefit of those who maybe didn't see the last WEDCOnomics episode, we are funded in part by the University of New Hampshire, so I'm a full-time benefited UNH employee. They give us office space at the Paul College. We have all the back office function of IT, HR support from UNH, and they are funding partners of ours. The state of New Hampshire, through the Office of Business and Economic Affairs, the BEA, is in large part a funding partner of ours, as is the SBA, so the Small Business Administration, federal dollars, and partners such as WEDCO, economic development corporations around the state, and some very small private funding are also funding partners of ours as well.
And you know what the real beauty of it is we operate in New Hampshire, which is a small state, and people know each other, and it's pretty awesome.
And I'm going to make one point when you say that, because we pride ourselves very much on confidentiality. I'm sure you do as well. We are a small state. There's a lot of people that know each other, but we take very seriously the confidentiality of our advising clients.
What happens in your business plan stays in your business plan. You have our word. Well, good. Yeah, and thanks for reintroducing SBDC to the audience, because it's global. People are in and out, and you never know who would. So let's move on to the five last, but not least, points of a good business plan. And I went over the first 5, and here's number 6. You say research and know your competition, both direct and indirect. Can you elaborate on that?
I'd love to, and I'll use an analogy. So we were wrapping up the most recent session of WEDCOnomics talking about this. If you're either a brand new innovation as a product or service, if you are an improvement upon a currently available product or service, or if you're a Me Too, so just the same. And Jack kind of said, well, like burgers, we have Burger King, we have McDonald's, we have Wendy's. They all do a burger a different way, and I won't list what those are, but those are direct competition. For a burger, I'd say those are direct. But what's indirect competition? Pizza. So if I'm a business that's servicing the need of hunger for a quick serve meal, I'm either a burger joint or I'm a pizza place. So direct competition in the example that you were saying is Burger King, Wendy's, McDonald's. Indirect competition would be Pizza Hut, different type of foods. So that's indirect competition. Another example that I'll give, I'll try not to be too academic, but I use this one in my UNH class, is if you think of Orlando, Florida, it's very obvious that Disney World and Universal Studios are in direct competition. They're in the same category. They deliver similar products and experience to their patrons. So that's direct competition. But in Orlando, you also have the Orlando Magic. There's a basketball team there. And they may be competing for that recreational dollar that somebody might spend on amusement park entertainment. So, again, not to go too deep on this, but Disney, Universal, direct competitors. Indirect competitor for that same recreational dollar in that same market, Orlando Magic. So when you're thinking about who your competitors are, don't just think about the, if I'm a coffee shop, I'm going to compete with just coffee shops. Think of where that discretionary dollar is going to be spent and how you're going to compete with that. And I think it's important to define that within the business plan.
Is it two separate competitions, a specific competition for direct and a separate competition for indirect? Do you focus more going head to head with similar products, or do you put more energy into attracting people from one food group to another?
So I just came up with this, as I said, coffee shop. I hadn't previously thought about this. But if you're opening a coffee shop, you're directly competing within a geographic area with other coffee shops directly. You're indirectly with me making a cup of coffee at home that morning. Indirect. So you may say, we are also going to offer ground coffee, that we sell as a package. So I know that I'm fulfilling that indirect need of my potential client. So I think it's important to define direct and indirect for a lot of reasons. But within the business plan, it's, and again, we talked a little bit about who the audience is. And most typically, it could be for a commercial loan you're creating a business plan, but it's internal for yourself and for your employees to understand what we want to be as a business. So I may uncover things as I'm drafting the business plan that are moments of me either starting a new business or expanding upon a business and say, I better make sure I have the ability to address this.
I think that's that's really important. And you brought up employees. They need to know who direct and indirect competition is. You would be doing yourself a disservice to leave your employees out of that conversation. That conversation probably should start every day. Okay, this is who we're up against, guys, and this is how we're going to win.
Yep.
And I don't know, but that's excellent. So thank you for that. Research and know your competition, direct and indirect. And you can always, dig this episode up on YouTube anytime you want. It's there for perpetuity. So if you want to rewatch these shows on the business plan, it's available to you on YouTube. And that information comes up at the end, I think. All right, number 7. Identify your target market audience. Define your ICP, ideal customer profile. Okay, let's dig down on this one.
Okay, I'm really not a fan of buzzwords or acronyms, but I mean, there is such a thing as an ideal customer profile or ideal client profile for your business. And I think as you're identifying, as you're doing that, once you've drafted what you are as a company, researched indirect and direct competition, you can start to refine who your market might be. But identifying it within the business plan is important. Again, either as an internal document or an external facing document to be able to say very specifically, I'm stuck on coffee shop now for some reason, but I'll just say, if I'm a coffee shop, who am I going to appeal to? What kind of decor are we going to have? What kind of music are we going to play when people walk in? What kind of menu are we going to have on our coffee shop, or for our coffee shop? And then transactionally, what type of payment system are we going to have? And just I think identifying, depending on where you are, even in southern New Hampshire, we have different little pockets of demographics. And if I'm going to be a coffee shop within a certain community, is it going to be only drive through and it's real quick serve, or is it going to be a place where you can come in and get internet connection and sit down and there's classical music playing in the background, or is it going to be a real upbeat kind of hip place with faster paced music? I mean, so who are you appealing to as a client? You need to know your market demographically, and you need to know again who you're appealing to, who your ideal client is, and define that. Whether it's a product or a service, you need to define who your ideal client is, because eventually that's the reason for your business most typically, is to be able to create a transaction with this client to bring your business some money to be able to sustain the type of living you want to have. So that's why it's important.
So when you say ideal, right? I think of that and I say, okay, my ideal comes here every day, tips really well, get something to eat along with coffee. I mean, do you get that specific?
I think it's, and yes, you can. I mean, I'm just going to throw out two communities. I've tried to be agnostic so far, but I'll just say, if you were to open a coffee shop in Durham versus Conway, you have two very specific ideal clients, I would think. And you're going to want to make sure that you understand who your ideal client is within Durham, New Hampshire's market or Conway, New Hampshire's market. I think the appeal would be different and the ideal client would be different for those markets. So again, it's important to define who it is, and I'll try to get off the coffee shop topic. But I mean,
That's all right.
I think you can translate it to whatever your business is, whether you're a tree service company, or so if you're service oriented, healthcare, you're going to want to define who your ideal client is. And I think it's important, and I didn't mention this before, as you're drafting the executive summary, you don't need to specifically put in there this part, but you start to define what you don't do as well. So you want to know what you want to be known for. We talked a little bit about becoming the expert within a certain field, but you also want to say very specifically what you don't do. I think a good example would be, we're seeing this trend, and I think it's been just because of how accounting has been such a, no pun intended, taxing industry to be in within the past couple years. We've seen a lot.
We don't allow humor on the show.
We've seen a lot of CPAs say, we don't do tax prep anymore. We want to just offer you sort of like fractional CFO services, for example. But we don't, CPA, that's where I go to do my taxes. Well, guess what? Within your business plan, I don't do taxes. I am a fractional CFO. So I think it's important, and again, try to jump categories a little bit, but it's important to also define what you don't do.
Seems to me identifying the ideal customer or ideal client is best performed with more than one person whether it's with your employees or a business advisor. It just feels to me like you'd get a better profile by involving more than one person in the exercise.
And I'm going to oversimplify it now. So, and I use this example in my class at UNH as well. I have a generator. I have at my home, I have a residence, I have a whole house generator. When the power goes out, that thing kicks on, my house lights up in a power failure. If I start a business as a generator repair service business, my ideal client better own a generator.
Yeah.
So that's, I'm trying to oversimplify it.
Right.
So to make a point, you're very specifically defining that I have a generator repair service. That's what I do. My ideal client better have a generator, because if they don't, they're not a client of mine. And then even within that, you can say, I only do residential. I don't do commercial. So you may find me, I might put my marketing collateral out there, or you find my website. It should very specifically say residential home generator service. So if I'm a business, I know that that's not the service I want to contract with. So that's kind of an overly obvious example of an ideal client profile. If you're in that business, then you better make sure that you have the ability to deliver those services.
And just to make sure everything isn't so black and white, perhaps less ideal, but still is people considering getting a generator for their home. You can't ignore them.
Right.
You can't put all your energy in them because they may or may not get a generator, and you want to focus on those that have them.
Right.
But still, that's a potential market explosion for you.
Yeah.
If you can tip them.
Yeah, it could be that I'm very rural and I might not want to have another piece of equipment in my yard because I don't know how to service it. But if I see that somebody's offering that, it could move me to the point where I might buy it. So,
very interesting. All right, we're getting to the top. Would you give me 11?
I think it was 10 or 11. You said top 10. I think I had 11 or 12.
All right. Well, we're at another number anyway. And this one is consider the 5 P's of marketing: product, packaging, price, promotion, and placement or distribution. Let's talk 5 P's of marketing.
All right, so again, this is a little bit academic, and I would say that a business plan is going to have, most typically right after competition, you're going to have something about marketing. So we talked about competition, identifying your audience. There's going to be how you reach your audience. So this is sort of in succession of what we've been discussing. And there's sort of a basic 5 Ps to marketing that I learned about several years ago when I got my marketing degree. I think most of them still apply. A lot's changed with sort of online business and things like that. But stating what those Ps were, as you just did, or understanding what they are very important. And I think that, once again, product, whether it's a product or service, making a statement of that, knowing about how you're going to package it, if it's a service, deliver it,
Or present.
and present it, and then pricing it. Usually, for example, if somebody's opening a restaurant, we tell them to put their planned menu within the business plan. If you're going to open a restaurant, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, whatever it is, you want to make sure you state that. Identify the client you're going to be catering to. But if it's a business plan for a restaurant, we always recommend putting a menu in there. So that's an important part, and that'll show not just your product, but it's also going to show the pricing that you're considering for your product. And then promotion, how do you plan to get the word out there? And this is within the boundaries of a business plan. In that section called marketing, you're going to say that you're going to use web, direct mail, social media, which platforms on social media, the frequency in which you might post on social media. So how you're going to promote it. And then placement is that last P, and that's really just about distribution. So it could be, you very specifically want to say, if I am a distributor of a product, maybe I'm selling a product that is drop shipped from another location. So you want to, in the business plan, you're going to want to say how that distribution works. So if it's a product that's manufactured in-house, if it's a product that I'm buying and putting on my shelves and distributing, is it a product that I'm selling that gets drop shipped from another warehouse? Is it a service that I'm delivering? If I'm delivering that service, do I have my own trucks? So depending on what type of service it is, if it's healthcare, what's my mechanism for delivering that healthcare that I'm delivering? So that falls within placement or distribution. So again, at the sake of being a little bit academic, I think that following or challenging those 5 Ps and seeing if they apply to your particular product or service, or it's a good test to ask yourself and challenge yourself if you fall into each one of those categories.
Of the 5 P's, is there a dominant P?
I think you better know what your product is.
Yeah.
And I think that the other thing is, I'll say on the topic of price is, as business advisors at the SBDC, we often find ourselves, especially with a startup, helping a new business navigate what they're going to charge. It's and again, without breaching any confidentiality, we have a lot of knowledge of a lot of businesses and in southern New Hampshire and what is tolerable for prices within certain industries. So we would never, cross over and do anything that would jeopardize competition within a certain product or service. But we certainly have a good database of price. I would say is probably the most second important one. We have a good database of knowledge of the tolerance of price within southern New Hampshire, or the whole state of New Hampshire, I should say.
But all 5 Ps need to be considered and need to be addressed in the business plan. They should be.
I would give you a canned answer and say they're equally as important, but
I'm not. We don't do canned answers here. We drill down. Okay, that was a good synopsis there. Next is know your numbers, develop a financial plan. Can you elaborate, please?
Yeah, so in addition to the business plan and a template that we commonly will go to, each business advisor sort of has different business plan templates that they might like to utilize. There's also an important component, which would be the financial projection. So
Is that what you would consider a financial plan?
I would say, yeah, the cash flow projection is going to be an important piece of the business plan. It's usually done in a separate Excel spreadsheet that a business advisor can walk you through. An SBDC business advisor can walk you through if you've never done one before. It's not that scary. And then it could be either referred to in the business plan as an addendum, an appendix, or you can actually copy and paste the spreadsheet and drop it right into the business plan. But I'm going to go back to the coffee shop. I'm pretty simple mind.
I'm comfortable there.
All right, so when somebody, and I use this example, no matter what type of business they want to start, I say, think of a coffee shop. Their primary product is going to be that water that they turn black that they serve in a cup. If you're thinking of opening a coffee shop, you should probably park yourself outside of a coffee shop and count how many people walk in and out of it. If it's you're trying to like land within a certain geographic region. And back to the topic of financial projection, start to say to yourself, like you said, Jack, your ideal client might also buy some food while they're there. So you don't want to think of as a patron as transactional, but there's sort of a dollar sign on the forehead of somebody who walks through the door of how much they might spend. So if, and I don't know this industry extremely well, but just say that the typical person is going to spend, say, $12 as they walk through the door. To do a financial projection for a coffee shop, you want to say, how many people, you don't have to physically go park somewhere, but it's a good place you could do research, but you should at least say, I'm doing a financial projection for my coffee shop. If an individual transaction may be $12, then I will have to say, how many days a week am I going to be open? How many hours in that day am I going to be open? And how many of those $12 transactions are going to happen in those hours that I'm open? To support this brick and mortar location that I found in downtown New Hampshire, Main Street, New Hampshire, will it support that lease payment? Will it support my overheads? Will it support my payroll? All the overheads. And if you come up with a number like, oh no, that spot that I picked out, I need to have 3,000 people a day to come through at $12, then you better pick another location. So and that's an example that I quite often use with small businesses, irregardless of product or service that they're delivering, because they say, okay, I get that. That's easy enough. I know that I do this, fill in the blank, for my small business. I know that I need X number of patrons in the number of hours that I'm open in a given day in order to cover those expenses. So that's how simple a financial projection is.
Simple but critical.
It's critical, and we have a spreadsheet that, I'm oversimplifying it for the purposes of example, but we have a spreadsheet that outlines the common areas of income. That's another piece of it. I'm talking about expenses, but so there's income and there's expenses. So the income, you have to define those buckets of revenue. So is it, and maybe it's more or less, depending on if I'm selling a cup of coffee and they're buying some food, but then I also have the ground coffee that they could potentially take away. You might say my average transaction could be $22 a piece or something like that. So I think that defining the buckets of revenue is an important thing. So it's, usually you can categorize it into sort of some, I like to say 3 silos of revenue. And again, when we get into advising, we could go deeper on those things. But I think I'll go back to the criticality of working with a business advisor. As you're drafting a business plan, a business advisor will challenge you, whether you're a startup, brand new startup, or whether you're currently in business. How do you make money? And have you ever looked at categorizing those verticals of revenue? Because oftentimes with an existing business that we work with, we might say, you're spending 60% of your time and 60% of your revenue, you just said, comes from this thing that is netting you 10% of your margins. So why are you spending so much time on that? So we often have a conversation of discontinuing a product or a service to focus more on the more equitable areas of your business. So that's all part of projection.
Right, and that comes to light via a financial plan. That's why
all
it's
those
so
things.
important.
It's not just about top line revenue. It's about how much money shakes out at the bottom.
It's the bottom.
and how much time and energy you're putting towards those engines or those buckets of revenue, and what percentage of margin they're contributing. And we often unearth that 60% of my time and revenue is this. It nets me 10% of that money. And you just say, what if you spent your time and energy on this that offers you 40% return on your time and energy?
Right. Critical. Okay, we are getting low on time. There's just 2 other items. I think we can cover these fairly quickly. So one of them, you've written that it's important to include supporting materials in your business plan.
So we talked a little bit about the spreadsheet, the cash flow projection. But the other thing is, we mentioned the menu. If you're going to be a restaurant, include the menu. If you're going to be, if you have photos to include photos in there. I mean, visuals. So graphs, any graphs that you might have. You can show demographics with graphs, not just with textual. You can show graphs that'll depict or show pictures of demographics, photos of your product or service, menu items, and those types of things as well.
Okay, and the last piece of advice on a business plan, for heaven's sake, have somebody proof it.
Yeah, I mean, have your friend, your partner, your spouse, family member, whoever it might be, proofread it. And once again, at the SBDC as business advisors, a lot of what we do, we can't draft it for you, but we can give you the template to fill out, and we certainly can proofread it for you. So take advantage of those services.
Yeah. So what you do is you Google Small Business Development Center in New Hampshire, and you will be brought to the website. You can schedule advising through the website. You can access templates through the website. Highly recommend interacting with these folks. They'll be a huge help, and they won't cost you a thing. And so, Ed, thanks for coming on. That was a great business plan discussion.
All right, thanks for having me.
And I'm Jack Terrill. I'm Executive Director at Wentworth Economic Development Corp. And we're in the business of advising, financing, and promoting small businesses here in the Eastern Lakes region of New Hampshire. Thanks, folks. We'll see you season 2. Take care.